Hello and a very warm welcome to Let's Get It On with me, Suzanne Letting, here on Spectrum On Air. Now, we've got somebody on this evening that I know you're going to enjoy listening to, all about his music. If I said to you Zero Corporation and Dark Sign, you'll know who I'm talking about. A very warm welcome to John V. Coleman. John, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to come and interview. Really warm day today, so...
We're matching tops, look.
Well, it's red OS, something bright and colourful.
Well, we've got a lot of personality to get through with you, John. So for our listeners' point of view, and some people who might not know you, who are new to your music, take us back in time. So at the age of 13, that's when your music bug started, wasn't it?
It wasn't something I really wanted to do. I was a school brass band for a while, playing the tuba, then moved on to the cornet, and then really didn't want to do anything and ended up in the choir for some bizarre reason. And the drummer of the band that I joined, his girlfriend was in the choir at the same time, and she sort of said, "Oh, there's somebody, a bloke that can sing, and do you want to come and audition for a band?" And I was like, "No." So I kept saying no, and she kept going on, and I still kept saying no. And one day they turned up at the school gate, very strange looking bunch of people with very high hair. And that was the first band I joined in the end. Again, I wasn't going to look into going into any bands or anything. I was always into poetry. I was into poetry from a really early age and read a lot, and I'd won an award at school for writing a story when I was about 8, I think. But it wasn't something I was even looking forward to going into, and I ended up there. So 13, ended up playing with this band, who then went on to be on John Peel's show, Paul Gambaccini, Radio 1. It was a band called the Doldrums with a song called Killing Time. And the producer was a guy called Pete King, who was the mastermind and the manager, but also the producer of a Birmingham reggae band called Steel Pulse. And he did the first single for us for Radio 1, which received a lot of airplay. At that time in the 80s, we were playing venues and we were just filling out 300, 400 people in venues.
Wow.
Like things are now, things are very, very tight currently. But yeah, it was a great time. It was a crazy time. Did a lot of things that I thoroughly enjoyed, went to a lot of different studios, and then ended up with a publisher later on. After the Doldrums, we turned into another band called Bamboo, which was me and most of the original members of the Doldrums. And it was a good time. It was a time when people could actually delve into whatever they wanted. There wasn't any sort of barriers to music. There wasn't any barriers to culture either. So there was a huge mixing pot. I used to go into Oasis in Birmingham, and I used to see Martin Degville and, of course, Boy George, who worked with him in Oasis in Birmingham. So that was always interesting. And I hung around and had clothes made by Khan and Bell, who made clothes for Duran Duran, various other people as well. So
Isn't it bizarre that you're making some really cracking music today, and yet for you to get airplay on Radio 1 is nigh on impossible, isn't it?
Definitely. I think it was really, really helpful at that time that we had people like John Peel, Paul Gambaccini really liked what we did, and Nightingale. We ended up on a lot of different shows, but again, it was about, there was a whole movement in the 80s. There was lots of bands, lots of people doing different things. There was us, there was The Beat, there was UB40, there was Fashion. There was lots of different bands around, some of whom never did anything, some of whom are reforming. And it's just good. It's good for the soul. Music's good for the soul. It's things that people can associate with. If you touch somebody in a way that makes them think about something or makes them associate with something, then it's music is a positive thing for the soul.
Yeah, I mean, your vocals, you talked about being in a choir. Your vocals can range from being quite rocky to really very gentle and very kind of, so that must have given you some training, I suppose, being in that choir.
Yeah, I had training there. I also had training from a woman that taught only for a short period of time in London, who taught Annie Lennox, Tony de Brett. I probably had about, vaguely looking back to the London times, probably about 8 or 9 lessons, 10 lessons at the most, very expensive. But she taught me quite a lot as well. But the people that I grew up on that I liked were people like really early Bowie, the Duran Days, Lovely Till Tuesday, Little Bombardier, all those sort of weird little songs that Bowie wrote that had stories to tell and had a life to them and characters in them. I really, really identified with. And then I got into listening to lots of other different types of music, from reggae and dub to heavy metal, rock. There was a whole genre of music that I liked. My dad listened to jazz. He listened to Eddie Cochran. He listened to a woman called Beryl Reid, who was all singer, basically. That was bizarre. My dad's from Dublin, so my dad came from Ireland to the UK to work. So I'm sort of Anglo-Irish.
You're Anglo-Irish, but you come from up north, I can tell, don't you?
Yeah, I'm
Birmingham.
So
yeah. Good city, Birmingham. It's where all the great, as Barry Tomes, our lovely Barry Tomes, he comes from Birmingham and he loves Brummie.
Yeah, I mean, the city itself, thousand trades, it really was the centre of business and industry and innovation. So, and I think that's still happening. I really do think it's happening in places. It's very difficult now for a city that's grown so huge in such a short period of time. But you could say that, I guess, any great city, really. But I do think Birmingham's a great city. I really do. Yeah,
well, here we go. High five to Birmingham and all that they're doing creatively as well. So at this point, I think we should listen to one of your first songs now. The first one we've chosen is Waiting for You. I kind of thought this was quite a haunting track because obviously the lyrics that you... Just tell us a little bit about the lyrics of this, John, and then if you'd like to introduce it.
Okay, so the lyrics behind this was based on the world working towards artificial intelligence. So everything's got a story behind it. Everything that I do has something behind it. And the machines are waiting for us, basically. And that does seem to be the way that things are going. We're heading towards more artificial intelligence in music, in the skills of mastering, which used to be something that somebody would do. There's a lot of systems out there now where you can map the tracks yourself. You don't need the prerequisite skills for it. My brother, who's a radiographer, they're actually looking to bring in the future systems where the machine itself will identify what the problem is and give you the diagnosis.
You see, now that's very fascinating because a subject that's close to my heart is music, sound in healing, because sound is pure waves, and they reckon that sound waves can actually, and they are beginning to do it, aren't they? There are some instances where they've used sound waves on cancer patients and it's had a remarkable effect.
Yeah, there's a lot of people doing, you call it new age therapy, but I don't really like the term, but new age therapy, where they're doing gong baths and various other things. So I'm aware of the whole system of that. I think music can do, if you play a track that's 140 BPM and really upbeat, then that's going to get people going,
it's vibrational energy, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you slow it down and get to the same sort of BPM as the heart, which is basically what I used in Heart Space, it actually shows you that there's a relaxation point you can hit with sound. And it's a very, 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 very interesting course that the way that music's going, and music therapy for people that have autism and Asperger's and that is really growing, and it seems to be a benefit, which you can only applaud those people that've gone into that area to try and help other people.
I've got a gong over there. You can't see it, but I've got a huge gong over there, which was made out of materials of mass destruction. So they were all melted down and they were all made into a gong. And we had two, a symphonic and a harmonic. And we used to sit people between them. And the gongs would sing to each other because the sound waves would bounce off each other and through the body. And we used to observe people completely changing the way they were sitting, the way they were thinking. They literally immerse themselves because the sound, some of the deep sounds goes right into the heart area. For those of you that know all about chakras and things, sound waves go through to each chakra in the body, and therefore healing takes place. Now, whether it's a mental thing that makes it happen or whether it's the sound waves, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I do know the benefits of those gongs when you play them with other people. And I think with your music, John, as well, the lyrics that you write are so heartfelt, you know. So we're gonna touch on your writing next, I think, but I think we ought to listen to Waiting for You by Zero Corporation, and we'll be back very shortly. But don't go away, because we've got some more interesting things to talk to John about. John, we talked in the first bit about your writing and your poetry. So from a very early age, you were writing poetry, and you've written some beautiful things recently that you've posted on Facebook. Where does that come from?
Probably from the angst of being a human being and wake up at silly times sometimes. I sometimes wake up at silly times of the morning. So anybody that looks on my Facebook page and sees the, you know, I'll put something on it sometimes about 4 o'clock in the morning. I sometimes wake up with things in my head. It's basically the whole set of words. It can be a whole set of words and the music and everything in one go. And I can then come into the studio, put everything down in one go. And it's almost like, and it's strange. I don't know where it comes from. As I say, I've had some element of training, but I've not had music training as such. So I've never learned to play the piano. I've never learned to put chords together. What I do is it just sounds right in my head, I just trust my autopilot and trust what's going on. My partner, she's got grade 8 in piano playing, grade 8 in vocals and everything. I never went that route. I went the rock and roll route, really. The anti-establishment route, I guess, in some way. Went down that route. I never had the opportunity. If I'd have had the opportunity, I probably would have. But I came from a very poor background, so I was really sort of lucky in a lot of ways to get the opportunities that I did. But poetry always sort of I think at an early age I really liked Dr. Seuss. I know it's strange, but Dr. Seuss and the way that he got things sort of rhyming and sometimes the absurdity of what he was putting together, but it still made sense and it was still real and it was still tangible. I think that's one of the areas that I liked, really. But then I liked war poets like Rupert Brooke, Wilfred Owen, those sort of poets as well, that had the romantic side of them, but also the horror and the desolation of being officers in the First World War. Some of the things that were written, also Siegfried Sassoon, were really, really, really interesting, but also by the same time so sad and so melancholy. So I was interested in that sort of writing, and I'm sure lots of other people from the time that I started to write. I know that Steve from B Movie liked all that sort of stuff as well. So it was just I just sort of liked lots and lots of different writing. I read a lot. I read all of the Lord of the Rings. I read The Hobbit, 3 volumes of the Lord of the Rings. A couple of the tales afterwards. So I think I was about 13 when I read all of that in one go. So I think I spent about 3 weeks. I think I read the whole lot.
There's a lot of information in that head, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there's sometimes the lyrics from David Bowie, one of his songs, comes to mind, especially if I'm facing sort of overload, especially in that sort of work that I do. And there's a line in one of Bowie's songs where he says, "My brain hurt like a warehouse, there was no room to spare." And I sometimes can identify with that. So
yeah. I guess the challenge for you is when you've got such powerful lyrics, and then you put together such wonderful, heartfelt instrumentation. How on earth do you get the balance between the two?
A lot of work. I think probably listening and probably taking a step back sometimes, which is really difficult to do because you get carried away in the sort of the way that a song will carry you. In the way that sort of people like, I'm going to mention some people that I also like here, but probably go, oh my God, Burt Bacharach and from the 70s as well. The way that music can sort of carry you away. Now, I tend to, when that happens, trust my autopilot. I really, really, really stress for any musician, trust, even if you think it doesn't sound where it should be going. Once you start putting boundaries around things, I think that for me, I'm really lucky because I've never had the training. So I've never been able to put the boundaries around things. And I think that's been a bonus. So I'm able to sort of go anywhere I want. If my mind thinks it, and if I hear a note that I think, I like, then I can build a chord around that quite easily.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of, there's Bowie used the same terms. I'm a big Bowie fan. Anybody that knows me knows that. But the sort of joy in what I call happy accidents, and sometimes trust in those happy accidents will turn out into something that could be quite wonderful, is something that I've always stuck to as well.
See, there's a fine line, isn't there, to over polishing things. What I'm finding with all of you artists is that, like you say, sometimes you do it all in one go because the idea is formed in your brain, and you've got everything together, and then you lay it down. And then you can sometimes get into the trap of overproducing it, whereas the first one is the most authentic one. And if you sometimes overpolish something, it kind of loses that authenticity somehow because it's not spontaneous, I guess.
I think modern technology sort of helped in a lot of ways where you keep version 1, version 2, version 3, version whatever. But I also think that, I'd agree that sometimes the spontaneity and things, and again, there's a lot of musicians that are spontaneous in the way that they write. I try and do, if I'm feeling it, and it's, bear with me a moment, if I'm feeling it and, basically I want to then run with it.
Yeah.
So it's like wild horse from running, really.
Now, you dropped in the conversation about your work plays an important part in your mental health and your mental well-being. So do you mind sharing with us, John, what you do? Because I know all you musicians have got day jobs, haven't you, that have to pay the bills?
I work for the NHS, but I deal with things when people are unhappy. So sort of complaints, customer service, that sort of thing. So for a trust, a big hospital that has 2 other sort of satellite hospitals, I guess. So yeah, always busy, always trying to improve things for people. But it's nice to have the break. Many years ago, I decided to go part-time, and a lot of my colleagues, I think, like the idea of sort of part-time work. And I think the whole country needs to do 4 days a week. I really do like what they're doing in some Scandinavian countries, where they've reduced the working week down to 4 days, adjusted the tax system, and given those extra hours to young people with proper jobs. I'm a big fan of that approach.
Yeah.
A clever one, and one that is for countries that are advanced, is only going to benefit people. But yeah, I decided to go down to 3 days a week. I'm lucky I'm able to do that. I know that not everybody is. That gives me time to do the things that I do, and I write a lot. I write a lot. I've got about 4 or 5 1 terabyte drives full of music and other things that I've done. And there may be just, some of it's completed, some of it's not completed. Zero Corporation, I'm on to the 3rd album already. And I'm also on to a 4th album, which is pure electronic based. And I'm also on various tracks for another label that I do some work for as well. So yeah, it's not stuff really.
I mean, for you in that department at the moment, currently, everybody's bashing the NHS, aren't they? Everybody's making complaints, and it's a real tough call, because you know that they're stretched, they're doing their best, but when you hear that A&E, have people waiting 7, 12, 14, 24 hours before they're seen, people are on the edge, aren't they? And you must have seen that over the last 2 years to a great degree.
Get that, but I think that also, the NHS is the best thing we've got about this country, really, if we're honest about it. You look at other countries and it's about how much money you've got to be able to afford your health care. The NHS is free currently at the point of delivery, and that's something that we need to be wary of. But we also need to be wary of that, we've gone through a system where we've decided to leave Europe. I consider myself to be a European because I'm Anglo-Irish. I'm the son of an Irish immigrant. But we are at the point where, we are stretched for staff across the board. Some people are doing career changes. Other people are getting older and deciding they want to retire early. So, and we have to ask ourselves the questions: where are the people coming to replace those people that leave? In any business, you've got this. The NHS is no different to other businesses, but the sad thing is that currently, it's trying to recruit people back into roles. It's very, very difficult.
Yes, and we've all been very supportive of our frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, but there's also the back office staff that take the brunt of it all as well. You guys, you're a very important, vital thread of it all as well, aren't you? But often nobody says, well, what about these guys?
We get, believe it or not, we get thank yous from people on a regular basis. We can't always satisfy everybody, but we can always be civil, we can always be respectful. We can always give people options, just talk through those options and see if we can improve things for people. Sometimes we can't, we're not, we don't have control of the whole system for the NHS. If it's stretched. You can't put back. And horribly, although people seem to think so, we've lost a lot of time due to COVID, and you can't magic that time back. None of us can magic time back. If we could do, we'd all be doing it, but none of us can magic time back. And with that comes the problems that, if things haven't been done over a period of time because of, people being ill or people being off or what have you, it's impossible to do.
Yeah. Do you work closely with PALS, or is that another because most hospitals have a PALS, don't they? Patient assistant liaison officers or services.
it is that team and the wider team as well. So always trying to improve things for people as well. So that's something else that, you know, it's nice to have the music, because the music steers me back into, I guess, an outlet from my mental health as well. And I think that sometimes we forget the jobs that we do, regardless of what they be, working in a factory, working for the NHS, you know, a CEO of a business, etc., etc. They've all got their stresses. If you don't have time for you to do something that you enjoy doing, you know, then it must be really, really difficult, because you're just stuck with your head in a business space.
Yeah, and you can't. There's no escape from it, is it? There is no escape from it, from everybody. But turning back to music, we're going to listen to a second song from you. This is Not My Time. Would you like to introduce it, John, and tell us a little bit about Not My Time? What is that song all about?
Not my time. Probably what it says. It's not my time to leave this mortal coil. That sounds very dramatic, doesn't it? But the holiday, I actually was going to do it for a Bond film, and then I sort of changed it and sort of moved into it. So there were Bond lyrics in there, but there are also a lot of me in there really as well. You know, I'm still here. I'm still doing what I was doing at 13, 14, 15. That really hasn't changed. You know, I've got grey, I've got slightly bigger, well, I've got a lot bigger. You know, it's interesting that, you know, I had the thought for that, and it came into my head, and I wrote it. Well, that was all done in pretty quick time, really. I probably did the whole track in probably 2 days. So my time, Zero Corporation.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's have a listen, but don't go away, because we've got some more interesting questions to ask John in just a moment here on Let's Get It On Spectrum on Air, the colourful voice of radio.
How they fall. hardest part is knowing when to fold the door. Switched up and cold. The mirror screams, oh God, getting older. The ending is closer, but the art of war is plain dead. Then watching them fall. It's no time to die. It's no time to die.
When I listened to that, John, I thought it was a kind of rock pop song, really, because I could hear at the beginning, I was going into a headspace and thinking James Bond, because you'd said about that, and I kind of thought, yeah, I can imagine this, Live and Let Die. This has got a big start to it, and then it did go off in a different direction. So what you were saying earlier was absolutely spot on. You could see that it was changing as you were developing it.
Yeah, for definite. And I mean, the interesting thing is with a track like that is I didn't want to typecast myself in it too much. So a little bit of the sort of sound you might hear in a Bond, but then sort of moved it slightly because nobody wants to hear 35 versions of the same sort of Bond song. Wanted to make it different to all the Bond songs. So I had I can't remember what radio station it was now, so please accept my apologies. But I had somebody say this should have been put forward because there was a contest for a Bond song, alternative Bond song, and somebody suggested that it should have gone forward, and had very kindly sent me a message saying this would have probably won, which was really nice of somebody to say.
Well, I thought I could actually visualize this, on the opening credits as it's coming up when I was listening to it.
Maybe they'll want to use it for the next Bond film, in which case I'm quite happy to accept the royalties for it.
So if anybody's out there listening, just keep an eye on John and get that song in for the lineup of the next Bond. So who knows when that's going to be. But John, tell us a little bit about your best moments in your career so far.
I think my best moments have been sort of later on, really. I've played lots of gigs with sort of known bands. So I've done supports to, I didn't even know, somebody sent me a message. Do you know you supported Sisters of Mercy? And I was like, did I? And that was quite funny. Playing a gig many years ago at the Fighting Cocks in Moseley, which was a place that was run by John Mostyn Beat, who also looks after Fine Young Cannibals. And he used to put gigs on, and we used to get gigs regularly. And we ended up doing his support, and I didn't even know who he was, to be quite honest. And I only found out a couple of years ago that we were the second band to ever support Sisters of Mercy. So that was quite interesting. We did some work with, and a couple of gigs with the Southern Death Cult before they turned into the Cult. And literally, it was probably a very short period of time after we'd supported them that they turned into the Cult. Amazulu, Streetback, which was an interesting gig at Birmingham High Hall where Joy Division had played. That was interesting in that I fell off stage, and then High Hall stage, it's about 7 foot. Lucky it was packed, because if it would have been empty, I'd have probably been about half a foot shorter, maybe 6 inches. But so that was interesting. I fell off stage, the lights went out. I normally had 2 monitors. I went to stand on a monitor and it wasn't there, and I forgot because we'd been practicing so much. Stood and stepped out into air, sort of fell into the audience there, and sort of, luckily enough, a couple of people broke my fall. I don't think I hurt anyone, but it was lucky that people were there. And my ankle was throbbing for sort of days afterwards. So I think I'm still getting the problems from it now, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
The audience sort of moved a little bit, and the security came and marched me through and back on stage. And the band, because they were so good, and it was the band that was in earlier, Doldrums, etc., Bamboo, they just carried on playing, going until I came back on stage. And really, all I could do was, put my hands up, and people laughed and giggled, and then that was it. And then it finished, and then had a party for 5 days. So literally a party for 5 days in King's Heath in Birmingham. So that was those were the days, as I say, very heady day. Very
Now, obviously, we've been playing quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. That was very vocal of you. Was that quite hard to put together, because it was very heartfelt, that album?
I think getting the quadrant 1, quadrant 2, 3, and 4 are sort of incoming shortly. But quadrant 1 is very sort of personal, and is also very much about. I've got this heart space. Is very much about, people mourn when people pass on, but really, when you remember somebody, you do get a feeling in your heart and your head, and images that you can't deny, really. And it was really about that.
Very, very beautiful, tracks to share. Thank you so much for sharing them with us, because you kind of open yourself up a little bit, don't you?
It is, and it's really difficult when you do that. For any artist that does it, all across the scene, all the other bands that I like and the bands that I listen to, it is when you sort of open yourself up. And when, as a synth pop, synth rock artist, you actually then produce something that is not different, but something that's more laid back and somewhat chilled. It's very, very difficult, because you then wonder how that's going to be received by the people that like or hate you. Either for me, if you like me or if you hate me, either of them's a reaction, and all I'm interested in is a reaction, really. I'm glad if people. But to do that was sort of letting go of. It's like being a trapeze artist and letting go and just
familiar. Yeah.
I think the net saved me, as far as I'm aware, and I think a lot of people have got a lot more respect for what I do now that have done something like that. But I hop genres, so that's something that people don't always get with me, that I'm not a synth pop artist or a synth rock artist or a funk artist or what have you. I'll do what feels right for me.
Yeah.
Genre that maybe people haven't heard, then I'll do that. I mean, I have done a song for my 2 kids I love or adore. So When I Should Pass Away, I've got a track. And it's sung in Spanish, and it's it's an operatic type track.
Oh wow! I'd love to hear that.
Very, very, very different. And I've asked a couple of people. I've asked a label I'm involved with in America if they would release it. When Should I Pass Away? Hopefully, got plenty of years left still. Something that was for my kids musically.
Yeah, wonderful. I love the sound of that. I'd love to hear that. And that is, Why Wait Till You've Gone?
Can you say that again? I think
I was going to say, why wait till you've gone? It's such a beautiful thing, I think, to be able to experiment.
I think so. I think that the whole life's an experiment. It's an experiment. Getting through the day is an experiment.
Yeah.
Learning from it's the bigger lesson. I think certainly as I've got older, I've got certainly a lot more wiser to things. I'm still Peter Pan in my head, as strange as that sounds. I have a thing called complex PTSD. So, I'm still Peter Pan in my head, and that's fine. I'm sort of at peace with that. And I like the idea that there are things about me that is accepting of other people, is whole, and is sort of pure, really, in a lot of ways. I wasn't meant to be here. I think I've told you myself. I was born way back in the mist of time. Dinosaurs weren't ruling me at that time. But I was born way back when a lot of care that went into newborn babies was sort of very, very, it hadn't evolved. So I was born and weighed about 1.5 pounds. I was given the last rites. But I did. I don't know why. And that was sort of I think I came out early because I wanted to sort of start writing songs and possibly. But no, I was very, very lucky to survive, and for whatever reason I survived, I did. So, you know, I've done stuff in the past for units and stuff to try and help raise funds for some services, and also Children's Hospice as well. So
we're going to touch on that subject next, but first of all, we're going to listen to another track from you. This is Divided, and this is quite a rocky track. Tell us a little bit about Divided, John, before we play it.
Okay, I watched things that were going on the television. I don't really watch that much television, but watching the erosion of certain things, it just made me realise that everybody's divided against everybody else. So, you know, it's not even about, it's not race, it's not culture, it's not, and the whole thing, the division between people seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I wrote Divided based on that. You know, I hope the world finds a way to sort of, you know, put aside all the things that are happening, what's going on with our youth, etc., etc. And you know, divided, we are seeming to be divided, and you know, that's a really depressive thought. But by the same token, it's the reality. You have wars going on after war after war, people starving, other countries having everything, other countries not even being able to get water. It was also the things like the water aid adverts that were being run on television, and you know, watching us and thinking, and you know, the Peter Pan. Why can't we, instead of throwing bombs all over the place and creating chaos, why can't we create, you know, something that is wholesome for everybody across the planet? You know, and it came from that, really evolved from that. It's probably my idea of social justice in some ways, which is fair enough, you know.
Well, let's have a listen, and it's a nice thought, and perhaps we can all try and evolve in that direction. We can only hope. So let's listen to Divided by Zero Corporation. But don't go away, because we've got another fascinating subject shortly to talk to with John.
So far to find the answers in here, somewhere deep inside. We have explored the stars, but still we can't decide what lies divide. The latest truth. Into many places fallen, and the streets with ghostless faces. This is the end. The corporation sucked us dry and left us empty. This bitter veil, we hear from every angle.
John, you talked on a little bit of the charity work that you did and raising funds. So you spoke to me off the air about Sobel Nation. What is Sobel Nation? It's a collective, isn't it? So tell our listeners a little bit about that and how you're involved.
Collective run by Barbara Sobel in the US. She has radio stations, a record label, and also is the Queen Mother of Promotion. She's won 2 awards for promotion in the US. So she's well respected, well loved, and also very, very kind. She basically, I was talking to a few people that I know, Martin from Zig Zig Sputnik, and also a guy called Mark Rogers from a band called Hollywood Beyond. And they were saying, you should be getting your music out and such, and, you know, have a word with Barbara. And I'm just not thinking, who are they talking about? Anyway, Barbara approached me one day where, you know, something in my life had happened, and, you know, I was going through a really bad patch. And she spent an hour on the phone with me, which she, you know, and I was really in a dark place. I think that's fair enough to say, really dark place. And, you know, massive respect to her that she stayed on the line from America, speaking to me for a period of time. And from that, it just, you know, I just said, oh, well, whenever you're ready, send me a track. So I sent a track which was called Clockwork, which did well. It was remixed by some of her Billboard remixers in the US. And that did well. And then after that, I just, you know, we just started sending more tracks. So there was that, another track called Upbeat, which I do live. There are some live snippets of me doing that. And then started doing stuff for certain charities, because Barbara's very keen on sort of, you know, trying to help some of the charities. So we did stuff for the Californian wildfires, for the vets that were involved with trying to, you know, look after the animals that had been injured, and some of them wild animals, so not really covered by any sort of, you know, any insurance or anything like that. So we did that, and then I've done various other things with Barbara for various charities, the Ukraine, etc., etc. And I'm really honoured to do that. You know, I'm really honoured for people to identify with my songs with some of the things that we've you know, endeavoured to help with.
I think it's a wonderful thing. And all of you artists, you're all very creative. You're all very sensitive. And I think that's what helps you be creative. And the fact that you channel that into helping other people, because a lot of you do, you know, is what really inspires me, you know, to do the show that I do, to try and help you guys get the recognition that you deserve, because you all work so hard in your day jobs. You all put something back into society with the charity work that you do. And at the same time, you're entertaining us, you know, which is fabulous. So we're going to listen to another song now. And this is a fascinating... Sorry, John.
Yeah, Barbara also heavily represents the LGBTQ community, not only here, but around the world as well. And he's very keen on people actually having and being afforded the same rights as everybody else. And that's something that I'm an ally with. You know, I really have no issues at all with people that want to be loving to each other, have issues that people want to be hateful to each other and destructive to each other. But love has to be the best thing the planet has. And that, I don't care, you know, 2 men, 2 women, whatever. It's down to, you know, individuals. But love is stronger than anything we considered to be, you know, better. Hate is something that, you know, I don't, you know, I try and avoid. But love, you know, is
yeah, how can you deny love? How can you deny love between 2 people? You know, you can't, can you? It's impossible. And it's the most beautiful thing that 2 people can share is a love and respect for one another.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the next song we're going to listen to is Twist in My Soul. So tell us a little bit about Twist in My Soul.
Twist in My Soul, it was off the first Zero Corporation album, and was with my old keyboard player, Paul Pinfold Jr. And Paul probably will listen and will look in on this, I know for sure.
Hello, Paul.
There's a few tracks coming out where Paul's played keyboards on in one of the quadrants as well, so you'll probably all hear that as well. And obviously, I'll always cite him as a friend, but also as a fellow musician as well. But yeah, Twist in My Soul. Listen to lots of different bands and liked Motown. I really liked sort of a lot of the black music that was coming out of Detroit. And you know, I grew up listening to sort of Motown anyway. So I wanted to do something that was electronic, but had just a little splash of Motown in it. Yeah. So, and it's about it is about that sort of bitterness of love, but also, you know, the wonderfulness of it as well. So, you know, Unguarded Moment, I Let You In, This Emotional Cabaret You've Got Me Starring In. So, you know, he actually puts you in the role of this emotional cabaret. And it just evolved from there, really. The end of it was a little bit of Motown backing vocals. If you listen very, very, very carefully, the doo-doos and the shoe very, very mixed, very back. But yeah, it's a great song to play live, believe it or not. You know, I was doing a gig recently at the station in Cannock, and I put that in along with a load of sort of covers that I was doing. And I don't think anybody noticed any different to anything else that I was performing, but that was quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, you probably found your audience, I bet, was quite mixed aged, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a good thing, is that there's, you know, I think good music, whether you define me as good or bad or indifferent, that's for the listener to say. But good music it's like a melting pot, isn't it, really? When we actually think of all the influences that have bombarded us when we were kids, when we grow up, we don't leave any of that behind. That comes with us, you know, and the newer stuff. Otherwise, we'd be writing music that would be alien to your listeners, alien to everybody else on the planet, and you'd be going, what the are you doing? There's that loveliness of association, and that's the bit I always try and do in my music, is to try and get somebody to associate with what I'm saying or what I'm doing, you know, whether that be a sound or whether that be a lyric or whether that be the way that I sing something. If I can get somebody associating with what I do, then it's a winner, really, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Well, let's have a listen to Twisting My Soul by Zero Corporation, but don't go away because we've got one more track to share with you. So stay with me here on Let's Get It On, Spectrum On Air, the colourful voice of radio, with me, with John V. Coleman.
in my soul. Really put a twist in my soul. In my soul, you really put a twist in my soul. Baby, put a twist in my soul. You really put a twist in my soul.
John, what's on the wish list for 2022? I can't believe we're halfway through it, aren't we? Which is remarkable, really. But what is on the wish list for the rest of 22 for you?
2022, I've just done a track with Roberto Thas in Singapore. Roberto's a great musician, very, very minimal setup that would probably freak a lot of people out. Very, very clever putting stuff together. Really, really is. So I did Language of the Heart with Roberto, and I've got a new track coming out with him shortly called Panic Room, which is, yeah, it almost has a slight linkage in with Waiting for You in some ways. And it's about wanting to escape and maybe have a little bit of isolation in your life. So that's been written, that's already done, the vocals are done. We've done one version with just one verse in, so the rest of the chorus, one verse, some instrumentation. I've played some of the top lines synth-wise on the track. But while I was doing that, and I finished it, and I thought, oh, this is great. And then I started writing, and I ended up with a second verse. So what I'm now going to do is do it with a sort of radio edit one version, and then a sort of radio edit where there'll be two verses in it. So I'm just doing that currently. And there's a sort of, I'm using a lot of techniques that were used by the Beatles on the ending. So for anybody that knows what that means, so reverses and fades and stuff. So the things that I liked in sort of Sgt. Pepper's. So that's in there as well.
And at this point, we should tell our listeners where they can find your music. So if they want to know more about you, John, where do they go?
Probably to Facebook, definitely to iTunes under either Dark Thing or Zero Corporation or Barbara Sobel. If they just put JC, there's a lot of different JCs around, unfortunately, but there's only one JC, and it's me, really. That sounds really gangster, doesn't it? But, you know, basically what I do, synth pop, and those are available on iTunes, Deezer, all the usual places, really. I'm on Facebook. If people want to send me a friend request, I don't bite. I am very mindful that I get a lot of friend requests from people that I don't even know anything about, and sometimes people friend you just to get numbers. I don't accept that. If you friend me and we don't have a conversation, I'll be, you know, it's not about ego either. You know, friend me, find something out about me. By the same token, I'll find something out about you. You know, it's about making those networks and being sort of open with each other. But I do get a lot of friend requests, and you know, my Facebook page could be 5,000 easily. But you know, I wouldn't say I'm picky and choosy, but I'm very mindful of where people are coming from. And
yeah, you do have to be careful, don't you? At the end of the day, you do have to be careful.
Definitely. So, you know, that's what's happening. I mean, also I've got Quadrant 2 coming up shortly, which I think is going to be the synth pop quadrant. So it's very synth pop. Then quadrant 3, which involves me doing synth rock, but also involves Luke Skyscraper James from the 70s band, sort of early 80s band called Fashion. I've done a duet with him, a sort of erstwhile duet, which sounds like Iggy meets Berry on a dark night. Let's put it in Birmingham instead of London and the Blitz, and let's put it into Birmingham. And that sounds really good currently. It's very different, and it's got Luke doing backing vocals, and it's sort of, he does a bit, I do a bit, he answers back, I answer back. He plays some of the guitar on it as well. So, and I'm going to scare everybody now, because a lot of the guitar on my tracks, don't share it too much, isn't really guitar.
What is it then?
I can play a keyboard as if it was a guitar.
Oh, you've got one of them, have you?
I've got one of those anyway, but I basically I know what a guitar sounds like. I've worked around, and I do play a little bit of guitar myself, but I wouldn't class myself in the role of somebody like Steve Vai or somebody else. And I also did heavy metal as well, to throw that in. I used to teach screaming pitch, so that's a bit strange. I also had my metal period when I had very long blonde hair and stuff. So when I say I've jumped genres, I really have jumped genres.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So yeah, I use a lot of techniques for playing guitars, but on keyboards, and I know what sound like. So I've got some of my guitar sounds I've actually produced myself. So there are about 400, 500 individual sounds that only you'll hear on Zero Corporation. You won't hear it anywhere else.
But for somebody, I tried to play the guitar, and my hands aren't big enough. But also, I could never get the fingers strong enough on the fret. No, and it's like no matter how hard I tried, I just literally couldn't do it.
There are lots of different types of guitars. Some guitars got smaller necks. Some of them are 3/4 size. I know a lot about guitars. So, and it really is down to sort of, if you don't feel comfortable with it, see what else is out there, really, to be quite honest. But the guitar's a great instrument. I've worked predominantly quite a lot with people that are guitarists, and I just got to know what sounded right as a guitar. And I play a little bit myself, but I wouldn't class myself as a guitarist. I wouldn't class myself as a keyboard player. I'm a vocalist. That's what I originally didn't set out to do. I think it's the right word for it.
The reluctant musician, I think, isn't it? That's what we should be calling you, the reluctant musician.
There is a strange story about that, which I will share, and it is very, very personal. But I think I was about 2 or 3, and I got lost in Ireland. And my dad's from Dublin, and we were at family. And I think my brothers were playing football. Somebody kicked the ball far, far away. Anyway, I ended up walking after the ball. I don't know why, but I ended up, allegedly in a gypsy camp. But they took me in. And in Ireland at that time, people were very wary if you were a stranger, whether you were, 2, 3, or 70. So, looking out for me that day. And basically, I ended up lost. So I ended up in a gypsy camp. And I remember my dad bringing me back from it. So my dad spoke to people, and they knew where I'd gone. So they got to the gypsy camp. Apparently they were feeding me, which is interesting. But my dad took me back home. And I never knew this till probably about a month or probably 2 months before my dad passed away. He'd obviously gone to pick me up, and he hadn't saved me from the gypsies. The gypsies were no harm to anyone, to be quite honest. They were just worried that there was a child on my own.
Yeah.
And they told him I was a musician.
No.
Yeah, which really, and my dad only told me a month or 2 months before he died of cancer. That was really, that's difficult, to be quite honest. But he put everything into perspective, but also, messed around a little bit with my head. So I'm probably here doing the right thing, but it was something that was very, very difficult.
It's something that you've fought really all the way through and not really wanted to do.
Yeah, it's when you're looking from that side, there's a certain irony to it, isn't there?
There is, absolutely, yeah. Well, we better listen to one more track, John, because we're going to run out of time, and I don't want to run out of time. I could talk to all of you artists for hours on end, because I find all of your mythology and all of your ideas and where your inspiration comes from so fascinating, and I'll never have long enough. So we're going to listen to one last track now. I don't know whether I'm going to pronounce this properly, but it's, yeah, go on, you do it.
Krampusnacht.
Krampusnacht.
Krampus is sort of the anti-Santa that's got moved out of the world of Santa, I guess, because it probably would have scared the life out of kids, really. But originally existed as much as Santa existed, and Santa was, the good guy, and Krampusnacht was the person that looked after the naughty children that didn't want to behave in some ways. So we were looking for a track to do that was dark, and dark scene sort of came from this, really, in a lot of ways. And we were also watching a series which called Grimm, and I was quite interested, and I've always been interested in sort of like mythology, and so Grimm, we were watching that, and it just came out of nowhere, and basically it wrote itself almost in a Dr. Seuss kind of way. It did work. And we wrote this song about the 5th of December, the 5th December, which is the 5th of December, which is Krampusnacht, Krampus night. And there's videos about Krampus, there's a film about him and stuff. But basically what he does, he comes and takes away the children that can't behave, the children that don't believe in the spirit of Christmas. And he probably takes them somewhere dark and eats their souls, which is probably quite where it was. But it was done as a way, I think probably in some ways, done as a way of probably controlling kids that were getting a bit hyper before they hit Christmas, really.
Yeah, probably.
He's very much liked in America, in the Nordic countries as well, but also heavily in Austria, Germany, Switzerland. And we wrote it based on, the Krampus story, really. So Hear the Sound Upon the Roof of, I can't remember the lyrics now of my own song, but yeah. So it is about him getting on the roof and looking around for kids, and he's sort of like, he's a bit worrying in some ways, but also he is the anti-Santa, and I think there's a message there that if there's good, so exists bad.
Yeah.
The end line of Krampusnacht is, because I actually did quite a lot of research to sort of get the ideas behind it working, and the story was with Krampus, so if he caught you and was going to take you back to a darker realm or what have you, if you kept him speaking, so I could probably do this standing on my head, if you kept him speaking and offered him fruit, he would let you go.
Oh, so it's a bit like The Nightmare Before Christmas, isn't it? That animation, which I loved, but I found that a bit dark in places, but that track would go perfectly in that.
It's had a lot of plays. I mean, it's had a lot of plays across the planet, which is nice, really. A lot of my stuff gets played all over the place, so it's interesting. But it got a lot of interest, and also a lot of the Krampus groups liked it. I might have coming up at the end of the year, not a variant Krampus, but a shall we say a track that looks at it from the child's perspective.
Ah, that'd be different.
So it's nice to turn things on its head, you see. So
Yeah.
Whether it will evolve or not, I don't know. I've got it sort of layered out.
Who's going to be the hero of that, though? Who's going to be the hero of that?
I think really, it's got to be somebody that owns a sort of fruit shop, really. Sorry, I just couldn't resist that.
Well, John, it's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to play out to Krampusnacht. Have I said that right? Krampusnacht. But what I would like to say to you is, if you've got an edition of Clockwork, if we've got Tom, I'd like to put that on at the end of this interview, just to go back in time a little bit, because obviously you were talking about Barbara and Sobel Nation, and Clockwork, you said, did quite well in connection with all of that. Yeah.
No problems, I can send that across to you.
Send that across to me. But thank you so much for giving me your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you and learning a little bit more about you and your music and the way you've created stuff. It's been an absolute honour and a pleasure to share your music. And keep making that music, won't you? And keep me up to date with Quadrant 2.
Thank you, Suzanne, and Spectrum Radio as well for supporting me as well, and supporting all the other musicians. It's not just about me. You know, we're a whole community of musicians, and it's, you know, times are hard. It's really good that we've got people that have got our backs in some way, shape or form.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. I'm in my element listening to you all and playing all your music. And I love all of the theatre that you put into your music, all of you. And, you know, what we all grew up in the 70s and 80s loving all of that genre. And I'm a bit like you. I like all sorts of genre. If it's music, if it touches me, it touches me. It doesn't matter what it is. But I'm in my element every week. And I think, oh, I could do this all night if I only have 2 hours. But thank you for your music and for your musicality and your lyrics and that wonderful poetry that you write.
Thank you. It's really kind of you. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sure we'll touch up again sometime in the future. But in the meantime, say hi to Sarah for me. Thank her for putting us in touch. And you keep making that music and good luck in your job as well. I know it's a tough job that you're doing, but we're all appreciative of what you do.
Thank you very, 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 very much.
Take care, John.
Take care.
Bye now. Bye.